How do you gray rock parents on the pathological narcissism spectrum? Hi, my name is Tari Lima, and I've been helping adult children of narcissistic parents gain psychological autonomy from them over the past 10 years all over the world. And now, if you're watching this video, you might have realized that your parent, your mother or your father or whoever raised you is on the pathological narcissism spectrum. What I mean by pathological narcissism spectrum is that they have a personality functioning that makes them entitled, exploitative, unable to empathize with other people's needs, and incapable of owning up to their own mishaps and shortcomings. They might not have diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder, but still have a narcissistic functioning. They might have another diagnosis like borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and still be on the spectrum of lacking empathy, exploiting others, being entitled, thinking their needs are more special than yours. So I'm actually using this as a blanket term for all people with such functioning. And if you've started to realize that your parents might be on this spectrum, you might also be getting in touch with the realization that it's not safe to share all of the parts of you with them. Because if you do share everything that's part of your life, there will be consequences. If you're getting any value from this video, then download your 10 steps to stop your narcissistic parents' control by clicking the link in the description below. The reason we start gray rocking people, our parents specifically, is that we no longer have the expectation that that relationship is a safe space for our sharing. So if you expected love to feel safe, but it doesn't, this might be a good reason to gray rock. If you expected your pain to matter, but it doesn't because their pain is always taking precedence or it's always considered more important, then you might stop sharing your pain. If you expected your happiness to be celebrated, but it's not, it's used against you or it triggers envy in them, your good things as well, you might stop thinking it's safe to celebrate your wins as well. And when those expectations for safety start dying, we naturally start emptying out the relationship so as not to give of ourselves like we used to before, because we understand that that's how we can protect ourselves. But let's look into what gray rocking even is and how to do it step by step. So let's get into it. This is a step-by-step guide of emptying your relationship with your narcissistic mother or father of expectations, emotional vulnerability, and exposure, so that you can start individuating and building peace inside of you. So part 1, what does gray rock even mean? Now, if you're dealing with people on the pathological narcissism spectrum, you've probably noticed that they can be quite provocative. They may trigger you, poke fun at you, criticize you, press your buttons, essentially drive you kind of crazy. And this is due to an array of different reasons. Sometimes they feel shame or guilt, and so they externalize that guilt and make you feel guilty for things that you didn't do. Sometimes they're just unhappy because you're happy and it bothers them that you can access happiness and they can't. So they provoke you into being unhappy. When we're dealing with such people, we do walk on eggshells because we're expected to only have those types of attitudes that are validating to the narcissistic individual. Within such relationships, there is no place for individuality. In other words, or whoever I am and want to be, isn't very well received by the narcissistic individual if I don't fit into their inner fantasy of what relationships should be like. And in their inner fantasy, my role in their lives is to regulate their self-esteem. And whenever I do anything that doesn't fit this particular role, I will be rejected, I will receive the silent treatment, there will be a smear campaign, there will be some sort of guilt tripping, some sort of punishment. This controlling and antagonistic way of having interpersonal relationships makes it impossible for me to relax when I'm with a narcissistic individual. This antagonistic and controlling way of having relationships will make it impossible for you to relax within such a dynamic. So gray rocking is about not having the reactions we normally have when we're provoked into reacting. When we adopt the gray rock method, we stop sharing parts of ourselves with the narcissistic individual because we don't want these parts of ourselves to be used against us. So we stop sharing our fears, our successes, our failures, our dreams, even everyday information about our lives. All of it can be used against us. We also gray rock to avoid giving the narcissistic individual the type of supply that they're looking for. Essentially, narcissists will routinely try to trigger specific reactions out of people. Specifically, narcissistic individuals will try to trigger people into reacting in ways that will make them look bad, or in ways that will make the narcissistic individual feel better about themselves. So gray rocking just means not having the reactions you would normally have because you realize those reactions and those parts of you that you used to share were used against you, or they fed the narcissistic individual's self-esteem or even their sadism, because some narcissists can be sadistic. It means that instead of demonstrating your emotional reactions, you stay neutral. Neutral like a gray rock. Steady, quiet, and uninteresting from the perspective of a person who has the habit of being controlling or seeking drama. Gray rock is not a type of punishment. It's about self-protection. It's not just about how you respond. It's also about what you expect from the relationship. And I think this is the part most people don't talk about, and that's what I want to get into with you. If you keep expecting curiosity, warmth, empathy from someone who is literally incapable of this, then you keep setting yourself up for failure and for frustration. So the first part of gray rocking is just identifying what your expectations of the other person's ability to receive you even were. And you're going to figure out what your expectations are by observing what you commonly share. For example, do you tell your parents about your wins? This might point to an expectation that your narcissistic parent be capable of having a celebration with you. And some of them are, but some of them are not. Do you tell them about your struggles? Do you tell them you've been feeling depressed, or that you got cheated on, or that you lost your job? You might have an expectation here of receiving compassion, and this might not be something that your parent is capable of doing. Do you ask for advice or support? This might mean that you have an expectation that if you receive support, then that's just because you have a loving relationship. But you might not expect that this support will be used against you in the future and will be held over your head as an eternal debt that you now owe. Do you share details about your romantic life, your dreams, your parenthood, your children? This might point to an expectation that your plans be safe with your narcissistic parent. And it might just be that that expectation is not realistic at all. Start noticing which parts of yourself and your life you share and what that information or content is normally met with. How does your narcissistic parent react to those things? As you start noticing these things, as you start noticing what you share, pinpoint the expectation behind that sharing and let that expectation die. Gray rocking is really about understanding the actual limits of a relationship and not fantasizing that it can give you more than it actually can. And this is where it gets psychological. This grieving process isn't always comfortable because it might hurt to let the expectation of having a parent that gets happy for you die. It might rip your soul apart to fully acknowledge that you're just not going to receive that. So when you stop sharing something, you're not just withholding a reaction or expectation. You're also performing a small ritual of release where you no longer need the person to give you that. And you accept that they can't. And then you stop suffering over the fact that they can't. When you stop sharing your wins, what you're actually saying is, I used to expect my parents to be happy for me, but now I see that they can't. So I release that expectation. When you stop sharing your sadness, what you're actually saying is, I used to have the expectation that my parents would be able to contain my sadness and help me process it, but they never did comfort me when I was sad. And so I released that expectation. When you stop giving them so much access to your children, what you're actually saying is, I used to hope that my parents would be different as grandparents for my kids. But I understand that was an unrealistic expectation, and I'm going to let go of that. If your expectation cannot be met in the reality of the relationship with your narcissistic parent, then it must die. And even though this can be painful, because you will become painfully aware of all of the things that aren't realistic for you to expect. Every time you release an expectation that is unrealistic, you create space for your individuation. And what I mean by create space for your individuation is that you stop holding your hand out, trying to receive something from a place that has nothing to give you. And you take that energy back and you redirect those expectations to things and people and situations and places where it's more realistic that they will be met. And you end the cycle of frustration. So, for example, if your old expectation was, but my parents should be happy for me. If you've already understood that that's impossible and released that expectation, now you choose a realistic place to place that expectation. So you start sharing wins with that trusted friend or your therapist who is actually genuinely happy for you. If your expectation that you've already released used to be, my parents should be capable of comforting me. Now you release that expectation and you develop self-soothing habits. You get into journaling, meditation, If your expectation is that your parents should be happy for your plans and they shouldn't use that information against you, then now you release that expectation. You stop investing in it. And now you keep your plans to yourself. You protect your seeds while they're still fragile. Or you join a support group with like-minded people who have similar goals and with whom you can share your plans. Maybe your expectation was that your narcissistic parent respect your choices. But as you realize that that's just not possible, you can release that. And take this as a cue to stop seeking their validation and give yourself permission to live according to your inner compass, knowing that you're not going to satisfy or please them anyway. And if your expectation was that they were going to treat your kids well, just release it by understanding that personality structures will not change without effort. And if your parent hasn't put in the effort to change, then their patterns will repeat with your children. Each release is an act of emotional sobriety. It means that you're strong enough to let go of fantasy-based expectations and actually stay in reality and find practical, real, sustainable ways of having those expectations be met in other places. Okay, so far you've understood gray rocking as a process through which we release unrealistic expectations. We mourn the fact that we're just not going to receive those things from our narcissistic parents, and we redirect those needs towards other more realistic places and people. If we've already noticed what we commonly share and what expectations are attached to those moments of sharing, now we need to start emptying out the relationship, emptying out our reactions. This means that you no longer feed the relationship the same emotional content that you used to. You stop offering your narcissistic parent access to the sacred parts of you. Your thoughts, dreams, plans, pain, and joy. And anything else that's unsafe to share. You keep interactions brief, neutral, and practical. You talk about logistics, not emotions. Facts and not feelings. You talk about the weather, not your trauma. Now, this may feel really unnatural at first, especially if you were trained to overshare as a way of feeling connected or safe. But you're not doing this to punish or reject anyone. You're just doing this because you're sober now. You can acknowledge reality. And you want to give yourself an opportunity to redirect all of that misused energy that was pent up in expectations and onto other things that not only are more realistic, but have a better chance of actually being safe for you. You're reclaiming your emotional privacy. You're learning that your life story belongs to you and not someone who can choose to weaponize it against you. So what does this look like in practice? 1, you stop personal updates. Stop sharing news about work, finances, health, or your social life. When asked, use vague, bland responses like, just same old, or when asked, just answer with bland, vague responses such as, oh, just the same, work's the same as always, everything's fine. Stop mentioning your plans. Don't mention upcoming vacations, career plans, moves, or projects, because people can't sabotage what they don't know. Also, if they criticize you, don't explain yourself. Don't defend. No justifying, arguing, defending, or explaining yourself. If you do feel attacked, you can just answer with, oh, okay, I hear you. That's one way of seeing things. Gotcha. Now, I do have to mention a caveat. Your parents might not react well to you gray rocking them. Some people react with rage because they notice that you've had this pattern, this way of behaving your entire life. And now that you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, you decided to switch it up on them, and they will notice. So expect reactions. Not every narcissistic parent will react in the same way, but some will definitely react. Pushback might look like them accusing you of being cold, ungrateful, of having changed, of not being the same anymore, of being too distant from family. They might provoke you, guilt trip you, try to reestablish control by creating chaos or drama. Stay calm, don't explain. Stay calm, don't explain, don't over-justify. You can just answer with, I've been busy lately. I'm focusing on some other stuff right now. I don't have much to share at the moment. And then just change the subject and end the conversation. Narcissistic parents will either adapt or escalate. If they do escalate, and I understand how scary this can be, this will be an invitation for you to really gauge how safe the relationship is going to be for you from now on. Now, many of us avoid gray rocking or setting boundaries or not engaging in the traditional dynamics exactly because we fear the escalation and we're not so confident that we can withstand it or survive it. And even though I myself have been in this situation, I have to urge you here to understand that this initial moment of escalation is something that, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable for most people, you can survive so long as you're not dealing with a life-threatening situation or with a group of career criminals who will literally have you get shot if you don't do what the family says. This escalation is going to tell you which boundaries you have to enforce from that point on. And this is why some of us do not want to rock the boat or change the status quo. Because the reality is, if you don't have an antagonistic, controlling, or aggressive personality, to deal with someone who does have that personality, especially in an escalated state, is really scary. But I want to assure you that we can all become a lot more courageous and a lot stronger than we imagine. And being able to deal with ever-increasing levels of aggression from other people has a lot to do with maintaining that first initial boundary, which in this case is gray rocking, for long enough time for you to get used to it and therefore not have such a hard time in maintaining even stricter boundaries. So push through it. If you already know it's not realistic to expect certain things from the relationship, don't give those things to the relationship. It's also important to understand that some parents won't escalate in an aggressive way. They might actually become super loving. They're suddenly overly nice, generous, present. And this is also a ploy to pull you back into the old dynamic or to make you feel guilty about starting a gray rock to begin with. You can accept their generosity blandly if it doesn't generate one of those eternal debts, but maintain emotional distance. Don't get overly wrapped up in unrealistic expectations that this time around things will be different. In some situations, some parents will just adapt to the lower level of interaction and sharing. They'll adapt to the low supply relationship because for them, some supply is better than none. In either case, it can be quite a challenge to start gray rocking. And it's important for you to surround yourself with supportive voices so you don't feel that you're going crazy. Watch videos every day about narcissistic parents and boundaries. Read books and listen to podcasts that normalize your experience. Because dealing with narcissistic people is already crazy making as it is. When they're your parents, oh my God, we have such a hard time believing or owning our truth. Join online groups or therapy groups to help you stay grounded. Journal about what you're learning. Create daily routines that regulate your nervous system. Movement, art, rest, nature. Do all of this to continue having strength in your gray rocking practice, so you don't fall back onto old habits and get hurt again. And this will prepare you for the long haul. So to summarize some of the important topics in this video, gray rocking isn't about just not sharing. It's also a ritual of acknowledging that certain expectations will never be met and releasing those expectations and going through a bunch of little mini mourning processes as you understand that you need to find safer places and people to share those internal things of yours that are sacred with. It's about releasing unrealistic expectations and finding healthier places to share parts of yourself with. It's about releasing those unrealistic expectations that your needs are going to be met in this relationship and actually going through a grieving process and then redirecting all of those parts of you to other places and relationships that actually are safe. Notice what you share. Notice the types of reactions that you get from your narcissistic parent. Pinpoint what expectation you had for even sharing that part of you in the first place. Release that expectation. Find healthier places to meet your needs. And surround yourself with like-minded people who are going to support you in your gray rock project so you can have access to your clarity as you navigate psychological manipulation, emotional triggering, and everything else that goes into relationships with narcissists. Now, as you watch this video, which part of it was most important to you? Which unrealistic expectations about your relationship with your narcissistic parent do you have to release? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, then smash that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. You can help the channel out by liking, subscribing, and commenting. Now, if you thought this video was useful, you might like this other video as well.